Hi, today we're doing the Off With Their Threads Imposter bag. I actually did this video once before, but because of sound issues, I'm going to do it again. We're going to hopefully go through it even faster this time, so it makes it even quicker. This bag is two hoopings, as in you're going to be doing a first piece, and then you're going to actually take that off the hoop, work on a second piece, and then you're going to sandwich them together. I will go over the steps with you, so it's not anything to stress about, but this is the only reason why this bag is a little bit different than the normal in the hoop bags. Although we are kind of running them as we normally would. So the first step is to run your basting stitch, your placement stitch of your fabric. You can also choose to do vinyl. I'm doing fabric as my main part, and then I'll do vinyl on top as the applique. What you have to do is make sure your piece of whatever it is that you're doing covers it. Like this wouldn't work. You have to make sure you completely cover it before you start the rest of your project. A hack of mine is going to be I'm going to be running step one again, and then that I'm doing on top of the fabric, because then that way there's not going to be any shifting when I do the rest of the applique. So I'm going to run that now. If you choose to do step one again, your hoop is going to look just like this. It's just completely stuck on there because the placement stitch will have been run over the fabric. The next step you're going to run is actually the placement for the applique. So it's also just a single stitch, but what's simple about it is if you look at it kind of like a coloring book, you now know where your vinyl or your other fabric needs to go. So it also needs to cover that up. If you don't cover up this stitching, you're not going to have a complete design. So what I decided was I'm doing vinyl on top so he has a little bit of a shine, and then as long as all of the stitch is covered, then you're totally in the clear. So then you run that next step, which is just the tack down. When you're done with step 3, it's going to look like this. He now has all of his lines, and so you need to cut all around the outside. You do not cut any of these stitches. Amy gives you enough leeway that you can cut close, but not like you don't have to be right on it. Okay, so this is how close I cut. You can see, I mean, I get pretty close, but I definitely don't cut any of the stitches. The next part of the applique is actually bringing in the second part, which is his face mask. It's not finishing off this original one, so don't worry when it goes to that next step. You're not missing anything. Okay, now the rest of this step is done. So it just basically went around in a full circle, and now we just have to cover that. We're just doing more of the same. So I just took my next piece of material, which happens to be this super shiny vinyl, and I'm just going to put it right over the top and run the same applique step. That step is done. I do the exact same thing and I cut around this. And then the next part is when this is done, you put it back in your machine. And if you have a machine where you're capable of just leaving it and letting it go, you can run all the rest of the steps for the front part of the bag. If you don't and you have to change your different colors or your thread, then just continue to do so. But there's actually no more removing the hoop from the machine until the very last part of this. This is just all the details. So there's the satin stitch and the accent and all of that. So just go ahead and run all of those in whichever color you'd like. And then on the very last step, it's just going to be doing a nice like triple bean stitch around. And then that's all you do. And then we'll meet back here. Okay, so now everything is done and I took it out of my machine. I actually took it out of the hoop completely. Do not cut around this though, because you're going to want all of the excess material for when you sandwich. The back has all of my stabilizer still on it, and since it was tearaway, it just popped out of the hoop nicely, but it left it in here. Don't clean this up yet. You'll have time to clean it up when you're finishing up your bag, and it just makes it a lot easier because when I sandwich it, I can see exactly where my lines are going to go, and it just makes it so much easier. So for right now, this whole piece we're just putting to the side. We don't need it right now. The next step is going to be what's called the back side of the bag, and that's the second hooping. So we're starting all over again. So now we need to run the step 1 again, which is the placement and the basting stitch. I ran that already, and I also drew on it already with color so you can see it. This is what's important, is this right here. This is going to be for your zipper. Amy lets you have enough space that you can do in either number 3 or number 5, and you're totally fine. This green line is never going to be stitched again. So this green line is the guide for your zipper teeth. Where's my zipper? So what you do, the purple lines are going to be sewn over again. So those lines you need to keep in mind for seams and whatnot. The middle line, again, is only a guide. Your zipper teeth, which is the middle of the zipper, is going to go right on here, and you use that middle line as a guide. If you have it like this, then you're totally fine. You don't want the stitching to obviously go into your zipper teeth because then your bag won't work. So the next step after step 1 is to put your zipper in, and it's going to go on the top of the zipper and the bottom of the zipper. So make sure you either tape it or hold it with your fingers or wood, chopstick, whatever it is that works for you. This part is preference, whether you have the zipper, I don't even know. What is that called? The pull. There we go. The zipper pull. If you want it on this side or the other side, it doesn't matter. It just needs to be out of the way right now because we're going to be leaving it alone. My zipper is sewn in. It has the top and the bottom. And then now we're going to be working on the bag part of the top and the bottom again. Sorry to use the same terms, but they are what they are. Of the back side. So right now, first we're working with the fabric that you actually want to be seen on the back side of your bag. The next part of the bag is we have a little hack that Amy does. There is going to be a line and it's going to repeat the exact same spot that it did when it did the zipper, except that part is actually going to be for your fabric. It's going to be for a guide. If you're doing vinyl, then you don't need this hack. You can just put your vinyl and you match up your very sharp cut edge up to your zipper teeth and you run it, and then that way it won't move when you do the rest of the stitching. But if you are doing fabric, a hack is, I want my fabric this way to be seen, but when I'm going to do this step, I'm flipping it over, and the very bottom of the fabric, which is now looking like the top to your eye, I'm going to meet with the top line of the zipper. An entire line is going to be done here, and that is going to be on the ugly side of my fabric facing up. I'll show you what it does. By doing the ugly side of my fabric face up and running that stitch all along the line, what it did was it actually made a perfect line for me without having to sew it, because now I can flip it up. And when the machine does the stitching around it, it's going to have this perfect line. And now there's not going to be any issue at all with having it be like discombobulated, I guess is my word of the day. Now, the next step is going to be the exact same thing except on the bottom. So keep this out of the way. And then you take your bottom fabric, which I'm going to want it to look like this. So I'm flipping it upside down. So there's ugly side. And I'm going to do the exact same thing, except now it's this line. I'm matching it to the bottom of my zipper. Okay, so I did the next 2 steps. So now I have this top flap and I have the bottom flap, and they're both perfectly fit to my zipper. And so now the next 2 steps, one is going to run the top part, and then the next one is going to run the bottom part, and it's going to actually hold the fabric down. Now my top fabric and my bottom fabric are completely on here. And so the next 2 steps, they look like they're almost one and the same because they're going to run the top and the bottom again. But this time it's actually for the interior lining of the bag. So what you're going to be doing is from this point, you need to be working on the flip side of your hoop. So then it has the same thing with these lines. It has the same thing with these lines. And again, this green one, this very middle one, you're not going to have any stitching over. So you have the top line and you have the bottom line. And that is where your stitching needs to go again for the interior lining. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using a fabric that is polka dot. And so I have my fabric. And what I just have to do is I just fold it down a little bit. If you want to, you can steam it so it's really crisp, but I've gotten to the point where I can hold it with my fingers underneath. But again, that's because I have a multi-needle. If you have a single needle, you're going to need to tape it. But this seam or this crease that you made, that's what is going to butt up against that line that is has already been stitched. And then that way, you're leaving a hole for your bag. or you're leaving a hole like with the zipper, so then you'll have a pocket in the back. So your bag should look like this on the top, and then when you flip it around, it should look like this, where you have your liner and you have this entire open spot still. You need all of this space because then that is where your zipper is going to go in the bag. So now you're done on the bottom. You're going to flip it back over. Now this is what you need to do. You can add straps or you don't have to. Like for this one, I added 2 little pulls where then I can hook in a like a strap. So I guess not add straps, but add tabs for straps. Or what you can do is this one, I'm not adding anything. No matter what you do, you have to move the zipper this next step. This next step needs to have the zipper pulled. If you do not move the zipper at least halfway into your bag parameters, your zipper will not work. Having said that, if you also want to add straps, all you have to do is put them anywhere you want on the actual line of where it's going to stitch, and then you do it face down. So let's say I want this to be my tab, and then so let's say this is where I want my tab, where I'm going to have my strap go. The metal part cannot go where the machine is going to go over with its needle. It has to be inside. So let's say I want the strap here, or the tab here. As long as I do it face down, it's fine. Tape it in so you won't have any metal on metal. If it's inside the area of where it's stitching, you'll be fine. Anywhere you want to move it on this line, you can. But the metal goes in the inside, and as well as the zipper. Now this is where it gets a little bit different than the other in the hoop bags that you're used to. You have this, you moved your zipper. Now get your other piece. My kids never leave the house now, so sorry about the interruption. Anyways, you get your other piece and you're going to sandwich it. His face is going to essentially be kissing the zipper. You're sandwiching it pretty side to pretty side. And this whole stitch is going to go around the entire thing. That's kind of why I said you want to leave your stabilizer, because then you're going to be able to see it. You want to match it as good as you can, but again, Amy gave you leeway. So if it's a little bit off, you're not going to know at the end product. So just try to match it as best as you can and have this next step go on your machine where it's going to stitch completely around. But don't take it out of the hoop after that, because there's still one more step. My pieces are now completely sandwiched and they're sewn together. The last step is going to be again on the flip side of your hoop. And what you're going to do is you're taking your extra piece of lining and you're going to do pretty side to pretty side. So again, you are sandwiching underneath the hoop. Well, I guess you didn't sandwich already underneath the hoop, so it's not again. But what I'm saying is, again, you're now doing this. So pretty side to pretty side underneath the hoop, and then it's going to do its final stitch. You've stitched your last part, and now you are ready to take it out completely out of the hoop, and then you're going to cut around the edges. Give yourself some leeway because you're going to have to do a little bit of sewing. Okay, I cut mine. I left a little bit of a tail where you're going to need to do the bag flipping. And then what you can also do is this is the time to clean up your stabilizer so it's not so crinkly. In order to flip it, you're going to open this area that the machine left, and then you just have to flip it inside out. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some elbow grease, but hopefully it won't give you too much trouble. Because then after you flip it inside out, you have to make sure that all the edges are poked out all of the way. Like around his little bag and his mask and his head. Those all need to be poked out all the way, because then you're going to do the ladder stitch. And if you need help on a ladder stitch, there's a ton of resources on YouTube, and they'll walk you through that. Okay, almost, sorry. Okay, so now he's inside out, and all of the areas that need to be poked are poked out. You take the tail that you had and you flip it inside the bag because no one's going to see that area again. And then this is where you do your ladder stitch along that last seam. And then from that point, or if you don't want to do a ladder, there's some people who use glue and irons. From that point, he's going to be completely sewn shut, except there's a little secret entrance. And where you left that space for the zipper, you need to take all that stabilizer out. Once all the stabilizer is out, you're going to kind of see how it opened up for you anyways. If you need to, you can slide the zipper the rest of the way open, and then this flip is usually a lot easier than the original flip. And then your bag will finally look like a bag. Just make sure, again, you poke all of the edges where they need to be poked. You kind of feel all around the bag. And then this is the time if you had any like jump stitches or anything that you needed to make a little bit pretty, you work on that, but then you zip them shut. And there he is. Thank you. If you guys have any questions, just go on the Facebook group and we'll be happy to help.